I had been dating Sophia for 8 months when she finally invited me to meet her family. It felt like a big step for us. She was this beautiful Latin American woman who taught Spanish at the local high school. I spent days preparing, bought gifts, and wanted to make a good impression. What Sophia never knew was that I spoke fluent Spanish too. 4 years of college, Spanish, plus 2 years living in Madrid, gave me perfect fluency. I just never mentioned it, and she never asked. If you are watching right now, hit that like button, subscribe, and let me know where you are tuning in from to hear what happened next. I first met Sophia at a local jazz concert downtown. She was standing near the stage, swaying to the music, with such confidence and joy that I could not help but notice her. Her dark hair caught the stage lights, and when she smiled at something, the bassist did, I knew I had to talk to her. After the show, I worked up the courage to approach her near the merch table. "That bassist was incredible, right?" I asked, trying to sound casual, despite my racing heart. "He was good," she replied with a slight accent that I found immediately charming. But the pianist was the real star. We fell into an easy conversation about music, and I learned she was a high school Spanish teacher who had moved from Miami 3 years ago. By the end of that night, I had her number and a promise to meet for coffee that weekend. Our early dates were wonderful. We explored the city together, finding hidden restaurants where Sophia would order for both of us in rapid Spanish. We spent afternoons in the park reading books, side-by-side evenings at movie theaters, holding hands, and nights cooking dinner in my apartment while dancing to Latin music. Sophia often spoke about her family, especially her parents who had immigrated from Colombia before she was born. She talked about their traditional values, Sunday family dinners, and how important cultural heritage was to them. I listened eagerly, already imagining myself fitting into this warm family picture she painted. "My family is everything to me," she would say. "Whoever I end up with has to understand that." As our relationship progressed, I noticed subtle changes in Sophia. She began checking my phone when I was in the shower. She questioned me about female coworkers. She insisted on knowing where I was at all times. I mistook this controlling behavior for intense care and affection. After all, she was passionate about everything in her life. So why not our relationship too? I tried learning basic Spanish phrases to surprise her. When I mentioned this one evening over dinner, her reaction confused me. "No, Dave. Do not do that," she said firmly. "I do not want you speaking Spanish. That is my language with my family. We need to have boundaries." I found the request odd but respected her wishes. I decided not to mention that I already spoke Spanish fluently. It seemed unimportant at the time, just a small detail that never came up naturally in conversation. Why make an issue of it now? As months passed, more concerning signs emerged. Sophia would often receive calls and immediately switch to rapid Spanish, walking to another room. When she returned, her explanations were vague. "Just my mother asking about recipes," or "my brother needs advice about work." Sometimes while using her phone, I glimpsed text messages from someone named Javier. When I asked, she quickly said it was her cousin and changed the subject. I wanted to believe her. Sophia never introduced me to her Latin American friends, despite my interest in meeting them. She always had excuses ready. "They are too judgmental of who I date. We will not have fun if they are around. They are too busy right now." What troubled me more was how Sophia spoke about people behind their backs. Her coworker Amanda was a desperate single trying to steal other women's boyfriends. Her friend Teresa was getting too fat to find a husband. Her principal was an incompetent old man who should retire. This pattern made me uncomfortable, but I dismissed it as venting rather than cruelty. Then came the surprising invitation. We were having breakfast at my apartment on a Sunday morning when Sophia suddenly said, "I think it is time you meet my family." I nearly choked on my coffee. After 8 months of her keeping me separate from that part of her life, this felt monumental. "Really, you want me to meet them?" I asked, trying to contain my excitement. "Yes, my mother has been asking about you. We do a big family dinner every Sunday. You can come this weekend," she said, studying my reaction carefully. I would love that, I replied, already thinking about what to wear and bring. "This is important, Dave," she emphasized. "You need to make a good impression. My family has high standards." Over the next week, I prepared thoroughly. I bought an expensive bottle of wine for her father and a beautiful arrangement of flowers for her mother. I researched Colombian customs to avoid any cultural missteps. I made sure my clothes were perfectly pressed. What I did not reveal was my Spanish fluency. I figured I would surprise Sophia with that information, after meeting her family, perhaps even impress them with it later in our relationship. Sunday arrived, and I drove us to her parents' suburban home, a well-maintained two-story house with bright flower beds and a Colombian flag displayed proudly by the door. My stomach was tight with nerves as Sophia rang the doorbell. "Remember to be respectful, and let me do most of the talking," she whispered, as footsteps approached the door. A middle-aged woman with Sophia's same dark eyes opened the door. She was dressed elegantly in a blue dress, her hair perfectly styled. "Mama, this is Dave," Sophia said, gesturing toward me. "Welcome, Dave," her mother said with a heavy accent, extending her hand formally rather than offering the warm hug I had expected based on Sophia's stories about her affectionate family. I handed her the flowers. "Thank you for inviting me to your home, Mrs. Garcia." She nodded curtly and led us inside to a living room where 3 people waited. Sophia's father, Carlos, was a stern-looking man with silver hair and a firm handshake. Her older brother, Marco, had the build of someone who spent serious time at the gym and barely acknowledged me. Her sister, Lucia, who looked slightly older than Sophia, offered the only genuine smile in the room. "This is Dave," Sophia introduced me flatly. "He works as a software engineer at TechCore. He makes good money and has his own apartment downtown." I noticed she emphasized my financial stability rather than anything about my personality or our relationship. The introduction felt more like a resume reading than a girlfriend proudly presenting her partner. We moved to the dining room where a table was set with formal dinnerware. I sat beside Sophia with her parents across from us and her siblings at either end of the table. I presented the wine to Mr. Garcia, who examined the label with an unreadable expression. "Gracias por el vino barato," he said. "Thank you for the cheap wine." My father says, "Thank you for the thoughtful gift." Sophia translated, smiling at me. I nodded politely, hiding my understanding, and the sting of his actual words. The wine had cost $70. Not exactly cheap, but I let it go. Mrs. Garcia brought out several traditional dishes, and the aroma of authentic Colombian food filled the room. I genuinely complimented the food as I tasted each dish. "The ajiaco is incredible, Mrs. Garcia. Best I have ever had," I said truthfully. Sophia quickly translated, and her mother gave a thin smile that did not reach her eyes. "Dice cualquier cosa para impresionarnos," Mrs. Garcia replied. "He will say anything to impress us." "My mother appreciates your compliment," Sophia told me. As we ate, Sophia began speaking exclusively in Spanish to her family, occasionally glancing at me to ensure I was not following. I maintained a pleasant, slightly confused expression while understanding every word. "Es tan pobre comparado con Javier," Sophia said to her sister. "He is so poor compared to Javier." "At least he has a good job," Lucia replied in English, seemingly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "Es solo un escalón mientras encuentro a alguien mejor." Sophia continued, ignoring her sister's switch to English. "He is just a stepping stone, while I find someone better." My heart sank as I pretended to focus on my food. I had suspected some dishonesty in our relationship, but hearing her dismiss me so callously to her family was devastating. Mr. Garcia asked something about our relationship, and Sophia answered him in English for my benefit. "We are taking things slow, Papa. Dave is very patient." Then she added in Spanish, "Es demasiado estúpido para darse cuenta de que estoy usando su dinero para pagar mi nuevo apartamento." He is too stupid to realize I am using his money to pay for my new apartment. I nearly dropped my fork. Over the past few months, Sophia had asked to borrow increasing amounts of money, claiming unexpected car repairs or medical bills. I had given her nearly $3,000, believing she was in genuine need. The conversation continued with Sophia alternating between polite English for my benefit and revealing Spanish for her family. She told them I was not the type of man she wanted long-term. She complained about my American habits, my friends, even the way I dressed. With each comment, her family's expressions toward me grew more condescending. Then came the bombshell that confirmed my worst fears. "Todavía veo a Javier. Dave piensa que somos exclusivos," she told her mother with a smirk. "I am still seeing Javier. Dave thinks we are exclusive." "Y él no sospecha nada," her mother asked. "And he does not suspect anything." "Por supuesto que no. Es demasiado confiado." Sophia replied with a dismissive wave. Of course not. He is too trusting. She went on to describe how she had been seeing her ex-boyfriend Javier throughout our entire relationship. How she had used the money I lent her to buy him gifts. How she laughed at me behind my back for believing we were in a committed relationship. Dave quiere casarse algún día. Imaginate casarme con alguien como él, she said, causing her brother to snort with laughter. Dave wants to get married someday. Imagine me marrying someone like him. The family began freely mocking me, calling me el tonto americano, the foolish American, discussing me as if I were a naive child rather than a grown man sitting at their table. Tal vez pueda arreglar algunas cosas en la casa antes de que termines con él, Marco suggested with a cruel grin. Maybe it can fix some things around the house before you dump him. This prompted laughter around the table except from Lucia, who looked increasingly uncomfortable. The final blow came when Sophia leaned toward her father and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Es demasiado estúpido para saber lo que estamos diciendo. Ni siquiera sabe cuando se ríen de él." He is too stupid to know what we are saying. He does not even know when they are laughing at him. The entire family except Lucia erupted in laughter while I sat there smiling blankly, my insides twisting with hurt and growing anger. I maintained my composure, continuing to eat, and occasionally asking innocent questions in English that Sophia would answer with saccharine sweetness before returning to trashing me in Spanish. Inside, I was making a decision about how to handle this situation. I could walk out immediately, or I could wait for the perfect moment to reveal that I understood every cruel word. The longer I sat there absorbing their mockery, the clearer my choice became. As the dessert plates were cleared, I knew my moment had come. I had reached my breaking point after 2 hours of listening to Sophia and her family tear me apart in what they thought was a secret language. My hands trembled slightly under the table, but my resolve was firm. I had to stand up for myself. "Mr." Garcia turned to me and spoke in English with his heavy accent. "So, Dave, would you like to say something to the family? Perhaps a thank you for the dinner." Sophia smiled condescendingly at me, clearly expecting a few fumbled words of gratitude that she would then translate and likely mock later. Her family watched expectantly, some with barely concealed smirks. I took a deep breath, smiled warmly, and replied in perfect accent-free Spanish. "Muchas gracias por esta maravillosa cena y por revelarme la verdadera naturaleza de su hija." Thank you very much for this wonderful dinner and for revealing the true nature of your daughter. The silence that fell over the table was absolute. Sophia's smile froze and then crumbled. Her face drained of color so quickly I thought she might faint. Her father's fork clattered onto his plate. Her mother's hand flew to her chest. Marco's mouth hung open in shock. Only Lucia seemed almost relieved, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. You speak Spanish." Sophia finally stammered, switching to English in her confusion. Fluently, I replied calmly still in perfect Spanish. 4 years in college, and 2 years living in Madrid. I understood every word tonight. I turned to address her parents, directly maintaining my composure, despite my racing heart. "I want to sincerely thank you for this evening. Without it, I might have continued in this relationship for months, or even years, before discovering who Sophia truly is." Sophia began to interrupt, but I held up my hand. For once she fell silent. "In case you missed anything, let me summarize what I learned tonight." I continued in Spanish, my voice steady. "I learned that Sophia has been seeing her ex-boyfriend Javier throughout our entire relationship. I learned that she has been using the money I lent her, money I worked hard for, to buy him gifts. I discovered that she has been laughing at me behind my back and that she sees me as nothing more than a stepping stone and an ATM." Sophia's face contorted with a mix of rage and embarrassment. "Dave, you do not understand. I was just saying those things to please my family. They expected me to what I cut in. To lie, to cheat, to steal, no, Sophia. No one expected that from you except yourself." I turned back to her parents. "You should also know that Sophia told me you were warm, loving people who would welcome me. Clearly that was also a lie." "Mr." Garcia's expression had shifted from shock to something closer to shame. Mrs. Garcia looked down at her plate, unable to meet my eyes. "Why did you not tell me you spoke Spanish?" Sophia demanded, trying to shift the blame. "Why? Perhaps because early in our relationship you specifically asked me not to learn Spanish. You said it was your family language and wanted to keep it separate. I thought that was odd, but I respected what I believed was a cultural preference. Now I understand you just wanted a way to talk about me behind my back, even when I was sitting right there. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. And since we are being honest tonight, let me share something else. I pulled up text messages. Sophia did not know I had seen screenshots I had taken weeks ago, when suspicion first began to gnaw at me. These are messages between Sophia and Javier from last month. You can see her telling him she loves him, making plans to meet at a hotel while telling me she was visiting her grandmother. I showed them to her family, who looked at the screen with growing discomfort. Sophia lunged for the phone, but I moved it away. "Dave, stop it. This is private," she shouted. "Like the private conversations you were having about me at this table," I responded. "I trusted you, Sophia. I cared for you. I even thought I might love you. And all along you were using me, laughing at me, and betraying me in the worst way possible." I stood up from the table, dignity intact, despite the turmoil inside me. "The reason I kept my Spanish abilities to myself tonight was simple. When you suspect someone is dishonest, sometimes you need to give them enough rope to hang themselves. And tonight, you did exactly that." Marco, who had mocked me most of the evening, now looked at me with what seemed like reluctant respect. Lucia nodded slightly, as if confirming she had suspected her sister's true nature all along. "I will not be contacting Sophia again after tonight," I told her parents. "But I wanted you to know exactly who your daughter is and what she has done. Not that you seem much better given how you treated a guest in your home." I moved toward the door, then turned back one last time. "Gracias por la cena. Ha sido muy revelador." Thank you for dinner. It has been very revealing. As I walked out to my car, I heard the shouting begin inside the house. Sophia came running after me, tears streaming down her face, but I simply got in my car and drove away, leaving her standing in the driveway. For the first time in months, despite the pain, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. In the days that followed, my phone exploded with messages and calls from Sophia. She alternated between desperate apologies, angry accusations that I had humiliated her, and pleas for a second chance. I read them all, but responded to none. After a week, I blocked her number completely, deciding that clean break was the only way forward. Surprisingly, I also received a text from Lucia, Sophia's sister. "I am sorry for what happened," she wrote. "I never liked how she treated you or others. You deserved better." Even more unexpectedly, 2 weeks after the dinner, I received a formal email from Mr. Garcia. He apologized for his family's behavior and expressed his disappointment in his daughter's actions. He wrote that in their culture, honesty and respect were paramount values and that Sophia had failed to uphold them. The email felt like a small vindication, though it did little to heal the hurt. In the quiet aftermath, I took time to reflect on the relationship and my own blindness to the red flags. How had I missed so many warning signs? The controlling behavior, the secretive phone calls, the unexplained absences, the borrowed money, the unwillingness to integrate me into her social circle. All classic signs of someone with something to hide. I realized that in my desire for connection, I had overlooked behaviors that should have been immediate deal breakers. I had rationalized her controlling nature as passionate care. I had accepted her isolation of me from her friends as a cultural difference. I had loaned money without question because I wanted to be the supportive partner I thought she needed. The healing process was not quick or easy. I threw myself into work for a while, taking on extra projects to keep my mind occupied. I started hitting the gym more regularly, using physical exertion to process the anger and betrayal I felt. I reconnected with friends I had seen less frequently during my time with Sophia, friends who welcomed me back without judgment. One friend, Anthony, admitted he had concerns about Sophia from the beginning. "She never looked at you when you talked about your passions," he told me over beers. That was my first clue something was off. When someone loves you, they light up at the things that excite you, even if those things are not their interest. That observation hit home. In retrospect, I could see how Sophia had subtly dismissed my interests while I had enthusiastically supported hers. It had been a one-way relationship from the start. 6 months after the disastrous family dinner, I felt ready to try dating again. I approached it differently this time. I was more attentive to how potential partners treated service staff, how they spoke about friends who were not present, whether they showed genuine interest in my thoughts and feelings. I was looking for consistency between words and actions, for reciprocity in giving and taking, for transparency where it mattered. Eventually, I met Julia, an architectural designer who approached relationships with the same straightforwardness she applied to her building designs. Our connection developed slowly, built on honest communication and mutual respect. When I eventually told her about my experience with Sophia, she was appropriately outraged on my behalf, but also gentle in helping me see that not everyone wears a mask in relationships. Some people just are who they say they are, she said simply. No hidden agendas, no secret languages. Now, a year after that fateful dinner, I look back on the experience, not with bitterness, but with gratitude for the lessons it taught me. I learned to trust my instincts when something feels wrong in a relationship. I learned that love without respect is not really love at all. I learned that someone who speaks poorly of others to you will likely speak poorly of you to others. Most importantly, I learned that maintaining your dignity and self-respect is worth more than any relationship. Walking away from Sophia that night was one of the hardest things I ever did, but it was also the moment I reclaimed my worth and refused to be anyone's fool or ATM. I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I had never learned Spanish, if I had continued in that relationship unaware of Sophia's true nature. How much more money would I have lost? How many more years would I have wasted? How much deeper would the eventual betrayal have cut? Instead, I am grateful that my background gave me the tool I needed to see the truth before it was too late. That painful dinner was actually a gift, allowing me to see behind the curtain and make an informed choice about my own life. If you have ever felt manipulated or used in a relationship, know that you deserve better. Trust your instincts, pay attention to the red flags, and never be afraid to walk away from someone who does not treat you with honesty and respect. The short-term pain of ending a toxic relationship is nothing compared to the long-term damage of staying in one. Have you ever discovered something about a partner that immediately ended your relationship? Share your story in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more real-life experiences. Share this with someone who might need to hear that it is okay to walk away from relationships that do not serve them. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the most painful revelations lead to the most important growth.